create another new file like CSS for styling. Okay, style.css, right? I'm creating one style.css. You need to link this CSS file to the HTML file. For that, we have link. Okay, within this link, you have to give rel attribute as style sheet and href with style.css, right? We have the linkage with this CSS file within our HTML file. Okay, in this CSS file, we can have the styling features for entire HTML elements, right? Firstly, I want to include you in this video as within the CSS file, I want to use one universal selector. Okay, within the universal selector, I want to make my padding as 0 and margin as 0. That means this padding and the margin will be applied to each and every element within this HTML file. That means we can easily override those universal selector properties later on the next lines of the code, because universal selector has the least priority rather than all the selectors. And we have the entire theoretical class in our CSS file. Please take a look over it. And I am considering this universal selector for giving default values as zeros for the padding and the margin for each and every element that can be overridden later. Now we want to add some styles to our particular every elements, right? We have created set of navigation elements, right? Here we have created one left logo class and we have button class, we have right logo classes. For these particular classes, we have to include some of the styles to our HTML in our CSS file, right? To make those styles, and I want to include another like ID attribute here. For this ID attribute, I want to make sure that it will be profile, right? For this profile, and it is cart, right? Within the ID attribute, I want to make sure that. Okay, let me have some styles to our elements. Like first I want to take left logo, right? We have left logo class as, and I am taking the left logo class for this, for add some styles to this particular Croma logo element, right? For that, I want to make some width as, my width of the logo as 150 pixels and height of the logo as 100 pixels. Okay, I want to make changes like this for the particular logo. Actually, it was better to add img here because it was an image attribute, right? For that particular img, the characteristics will be applied. Okay, and we have here like button class here. Okay, for this particular button class, we can include dot button. I want to include my button width. Okay, for my particular button. Okay, for the within the button we have image, right? We can consider image here. Okay, for that particular button image, we have width as, let me say, 30 pixels of width. Okay, 30 pixels. Okay, and we have right logos, right? We have right logos, but rather than taking the right logos, we have to include particular dimensions for the individual elements. For the profile logo, I want to make my width as 40 pixels, and for the cart logo, I want to make my width as 50 pixels. For that, we have to consider ID element here. Okay, we have to take ID selector. Okay, within the as we can take profile. Okay, here we have to take image. For the particular image, it will be applied. And if you consider my width as 40 pixels around, and I want to take another ID selector which contains cart. Okay, sorry, cart img. Within this, I want to include my width as 50 pixels, right? 50 pixels. Okay, this is the general way that we can add some sizing dimensions to our particular logos, right? If I going to save this entire element, and once we check the output for our convenience, I'm going to refresh here. See here, this is not a good looking manner. Okay, this is not in a perfect looking. Okay, so that we have to consider this entire thing into a navigation folder, right? Within the some particular navigation, we have considered these entire things, right? So that to make these arrangements in a linear motion, for that we have to consider the some properties to the navigation element, right? We have considered here some navigation, right? We have considered navigation. Within this navigation container, we have considered entire elements, right? If we add some additional styles to our navigation, we can make sure that these elements will be sorted to in a horizontal manner as it is like this. Okay, for that we have to include one nav element selector, right? I'm including nav element selector. Directly we can consider element selector. I want to make my display feature as flexible, and I want to include my background color. Okay, background color as black, and height of my navigation bar as, let me take 85 pixels. Okay, and I want to include some another features like aligns and align items, right? I want to make my all items at the center of my navigation bar, and I want to justify, okay, justify my content to the center. Okay, let me consider this as 80 pixel. Okay, if I save here and if I go to till here, you can see, okay, somehow we have created a better representation of this particular logos in a particular navigation, right? We have the indexes like structure. Okay, we have particular indexes for these, like we have chroma, we have search bar, we have search logo, we have profile logo, we have cart logo. Okay, and the thing that we need to create here is we have to increase the width of this particular search bar, and we have to add some paddings and the margins to the particular logo for beautiful representation like this. Okay, for beautiful representation like this. For that reason, I want to make sure that I have to add some additional properties to our particular elements, right? Firstly, I want to add some padding to my chroma element for that, so that we have some gap between these elements. And I want to make sure that this search bar, this button search bar, have the width of nearly bigger than this. And we have to include this search bar within this button element, right? And we have to add some margins and the paddings to this profile and the cart too. And for that reason, I am opening our navigation, and here I want to include for the left logo, I want to display it as flexible. Okay, and I want to add some padding to top and bottom as 0, and I want to add padding to the left and right as 30 pixels, right? If I going to save, you can see the change here. See, we have some distance over here. Okay, and see here, but it's the search bar should be a far more bigger than the we have appeared. Okay, for that I am considering here dot search, right? We have, see here, we have considered the search div class. Okay, we have considered the class of search within the div element. Okay, that means we are going to apply the properties within these two folders, input and the button folders. Okay, these properties will be applied to both of the input and the button elements, right? And we are going to add some features to this search class selector. I want to display them as flex. Okay, and I want to make sure that I have width and height of the particular div container class. I want to make my width as 40 pixels and height as same 40 pixels, which is square one. I want to make my background color of the search bar as white, because we have white there, right? And if I want to have some border radius, right? Some basically we have some border radius there. It's around 8 pixels I want to take, and we have to include some margin for that particular search bar. Okay, width of 25 pixels margin. Okay, if I save this here and go for this thing, see, it was very clumsy, right? And if I go here, and you can see the, I want to apply some particular features within my search element to the input. Okay, for the input tag, for the particular input element, I want to add some features, right? For that, I want to increase my height to 40 pixels, and as is border radius as 8 pixels, width as 100% of the entire div folder, right? My border as 0, I want to make my border as 0, and padding as 0 for the top and bottom, and 20 pixels from the left and right. And I want to make my outline none, and I want to include my font size as around 20 pixels. Let us see what will happen. If I going to refresh, see, it is not a good looking. And if I go to here, and will you guess why the thing is like this, which is very clumsy? But the mistake that we have done here is we have included the width and height as 40 pixels only. Okay, here the 40 pixels of height is okay, but the width of the search bar is 40 pixels, which is very small. That is, we create a square box like this. For that reason, I can change my width as 40 VW. Okay, if I consider this VW, and if I going to save, if I going to refresh here, see, we have so far completed some of the content. Okay, if you open our Chroma, see here, it is like this only. Okay, and the some of the things that we have to added upon in this is we have to consider the search bar as the transparency without having any borders, right? And we have to include this search logo within this search bar, and we have to take this background border and we have to make it transparent, and we have to add some margin to this profile and the cart too. Okay, for that open the Visual Studio CSS file again. For that we have button class, right? For that particular button class we can have border as 0, right? We have to include border as 0, but considering that we don't have this border, right? If I refresh, see here the border will be removed from there. Okay, and it is okay, but we have to include this logo within this particular bar, right? For that, make it as a transparent background, right? And you can have background property, right? Background property as transparent, and add some other features like some padding. Okay, I want to add some padding of top to bottom as 5 pixels around, and left and right as 15 pixels. Okay, let me say. If I going to refresh, see here, it is beautiful. And the thing here is we have the cursor as the arrow symbol, right? We have arrow symbol. Okay, if I use cursor property and I want to include pointer here, for this I can have this cursor as pointer. See here, the change here is when I hovering this search logo, it is a arrow mark. If I going to refresh, see the change now. When I going to hover over this particular search bar, it is hand symbol, because we are considering the property of the cursor to the pointer here. Okay, within this button. Okay, this is the general additional feature of the cursor property. That means we can change the property to the hand symbol from the arrow symbol. Okay, we have gone up all creation of enter this thing, but we have to include this profile and the cart margins, right? We have to make sure these are to be aligned at the right corner, right? For that we have class as right logos, right? For the right logos, if we include the margin as right logos, we have margin property, right? I am including 20 pixels of margin. I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh. See, the things will be set to the good looking. Okay, this is the general thing that we can create our own interface. Okay, this is the thing that we are going to create from nearly 10 to 15 minutes, right? Okay, we can have some additional margins and paddings to make these things at the corner, but it is good looking, right? Similarly like this, but we have address bar here, so that those are all be set to the some most corner part, right? But we don't have this menu and the address bar in our Chroma file, right? So that let me consider these things here only. Okay, this is the perfect thing. If you inspect these things in our HTML file, see, this is the development tools. If you inspect these things in our development tools, we have entire thing, right? This is the entire thing we have done so far. Okay, we have this content as 150 by 100, and we have included 30 padding, which is highlighted with green background, and we have no border and the no margin. For this particular element, if you inspect, we have 40 by 40 size of the image. We don't have any padding. Okay, and if I make sure that we have the same features, right? 50 by 50. Okay, and if I consider everything, we can have the development tool structure like this. Okay, this is the HTML file, and if you go for the styles, and I am considering these are the styling features we have applied to this particular element. Okay, this is the general thing how we can create everything like this. Okay, I think we have completed some much amount. In the next video we are going to add some of these pictures in our web page. For that, make sure that you have downloaded these images, right? Okay, download this image and download these 9 images, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Okay, we are going to add some images, right? This image, this image, this image, we are going to add all these images to our web page, and we are going to add this add constitution of joy. Okay, this ad will be added to our web page. Okay, these things we are going to add it in our next video. Thank you.